As a quilter, because I know it feels good to quilt. It feels when you sit down and you quilt and you're like, this is nice. The question is why? What's going on? Why does this feel good? So, Peter, the next question's for you. And as I throw this one at you as a doctor. Just on the physical level, when a person is working on a project, what is it that physically makes them feel better?
I wrote down the three things. I mean, one is your concentration and preoccupation on something.
Can you bring the mic up a little closer to you?
Your concentration or preoccupation on something. The distraction element of it, and reduction of discomfort and pain, and likewise. The meditative focus, which I think Martin will talk a little bit about, all right? But, huge amounts of physical health benefits from being in that meditative state. But really it's the social activity. The scourge of modern society is loneliness. It's the major social cause of death. It is way more than smoking and diabetes. It's a major issue. And any reduction in loneliness is a benefit. And the second thing, and probably the main determinant of what really is health, is having meaning and purpose. So having that purpose of completing that quilt is beneficial. You live longer. You delay the onset of dementia. That's why I think I'm going to take up quilting. All right. Actually, it's not specifically, but doing crosswords doesn't cut it, by the way. Those things have got to be some challenge. That's an element of challenge for it. But there are also cardiovascular benefits, and there are the metabolic benefits. So there are documented health benefits from being in a social environment, just as much as having a challenging or interesting focus on you as well. So it's a bit of a win-win. And if you start on that journey of social interaction earlier, your benefits are greater. Okay, that's my answer.
Thank you, Peter. And I would like to say, just as a massage therapist, one of the things that I do, what I do, is a lot of people, it's about the nervous system itself. In the nervous system, you have like fight or flight, all the way down to rest and digest is what it's called. And one of the things they say for a person to be able to get into rest and digest, which is when you're really taking care of yourself, is to focus on something very close. So reading a book, doing sewing, that sort of thing, it focuses you, and then your nervous system actually calms down. So that was another thing I wanted to add into that one. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add to this part?
I have been told many times, even during this exhibition, you just sit and sew. It's not a physical activity. Well, I promise you it is. And one of them, in my sewing room, I've set it up, so I have to get up from my sewing machine and walk to the iron and walk to my cutting table. So I've added, the worst thing a quilter can do is sit with a table that they just swivel on the chair. Bad news. Get up and walk. But also try handling queen-size quilts all day or cutting meters of fabric. I can promise you, you'll discover muscles you never knew you had. And the activity of using, a bit like these guys have just said, the hand and the mind together, to say nothing of adding the feet to control. And I've been working on a treadle machine, which is even more feet action, but even a modern machine, you control it with your buttons. So we're using hands, minds, eyes, our whole body is involved. But it also provides me with calmness and being fully engaged and focused. So yes, I do get a physical workout.
Okay, and so Martin, the next question is actually for you. Now on the mental health and the well-being level, what is being affected as a person is working on a project?
One of the things that human beings need is to have an adequate sense of competency in everyday life. And so when we're choosing a craft, we balance the humiliation of learning and failing with the growth of competency that comes from learning. So there's an interesting kind of paradox that if you were to look around here and say, oh, I know nothing about quilting, I'm going to start today, you might think, well, I won't start with that one over there. So how do we build competence and learn at the same time? Because if you have to learn, it means that you don't know something. So we touch into that sense of ignorance and incompetence. So there's this lovely dance around learning and incompetence and the growth of competence. Another key element of everyday satisfaction, social emotional well-being, is the notion that we are confronted with small problems that are just at the cusp of our ability to overcome. And so something like quilting, stone carving, mosaics, so many of the crafts, wood turning, we have this cycle of small problems, building our confidence and competence, or enacting our competence to overcome that problem, and then reaching the next, and so on. And this is one of the key elements to satisfaction in life.
Excellent. Maureen, do you have any personal stories that support?
Oh, yeah, and I just love and want to say yay to what Mark just said, and that if anybody wants to have a go at quilting, I've got some kits, the fabric's all cut, everything you need's in it, and you can take one home today and just have a go and make a little 1 metre square quilt, which you can donate back. That's just a little sideline. I may not have accomplished my goal of sewing tops on my treadle machine while I've been sitting here all week because I got too busy talking. But often at day's end or in that quiet moment between about 2 and 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I would sit there and I could change my calmness level down like this, and my heartbeat, and I'm sure all those nasty things that doctors like measuring, would just calm down. It was a real physical feeling, and it didn't take very long. In the weeks leading up to this, which don't ask Paul about, because he'll tell you how many times he had to pull me down off the roof or somewhere, I didn't get much sewing done. And then one day I thought, I just have to sew. It was a physical itch, and a lot of quilters I know will say the same thing. It's almost a desperation. I have to touch fabric, I have to sew. And so all the paperwork got pushed aside, and I sat and sewed simple things. I sewed samplers. I didn't make quilts. It was simple stuff, but it gave me my equilibrium, my sanity back. And I have a few kits shut away in my cupboards by one of my favourite quilt designers and fabric designers. They're beautiful fabrics. I love working with them. But I leave them there for days that I'm highly stressed and I'm just out of control almost, and I'll pull one of those out, the pattern's there, the fabric's there, and I guess some people would go and have a massage or sit in the spa bath, but for me to sit and become completely lost just changes who I am. So yes, it makes a difference. Sheer blissful joy.
Thank you. So the next question is for Peter. Quilting is a creative process. Can you talk about how the creative process affects us?
Yeah, thank you. Yes. I am in absolute admiration of the creativity in all of these quilts here and the people who do it. And so I just, to start with, thought about what was involved in the creative process. And really part of it was I've always wanted to be creative, and I haven't got much longer to find out that I could be creative. So it is, it's something that I've almost felt it's like singing. If you are told when you're at preschool, at your primary school, oh, you're dreadful, you can't sing, you carry that for the rest of your life. And I have never sung ever since I was told that. And so creativity is something that I think you can suffer from being put down and failing. And so I dissected it up The first one was imagination, visualization. And imagination is an amazing concept that somewhere out of your mind you can get an idea. And it is uniquely Homo sapiens. All of our human predecessors didn't have it. So it is something that is involved in making us and what Homo sapiens, successful, unfortunately. Yeah. Self-awareness and being in touch with your feelings, having your own personal style. So that requires reflection on yourself, what your values matter for you, and what's important for you. Telling your story. I'm a believer that we not only have stories that we're given and told, but we actually have stories that we inherit, genetically inherit stories. And our life is a story. We're telling a story. And a lot of these quilts are telling that story. And I believe, that it's important at times to be able to tell your own story. I'm waiting for my grandchildren, possibly actually I'm waiting for my own children to ask me about my story. I'm amazed to find out that I have assumed that my children know where I was born, which is rather an odd place. And I'm amazed to find out sometimes that one of them says, "Now, where were you born?" So telling your story, I think, is an important part of it. Competence, skills, and practice. I was feeling a failure in photography a few years ago, and so I asked a professional photographer, I said, "How can I develop creativity in my photography?" He said, "Oh, you've just got to take a lot of photographs." And so I did. I never became more creative. Goal setting, challenge, risk taking, taking the risk, and those sorts of things, they are, an important part of being creative. It's, I want to do this, but that leads to the next one, which is commitment and passion. And a commitment is a promise to yourself. It's an internal thing. It's you are committing to this. You're making a decision. You have choice and you're making a decision. And I see passion almost as a devotion. Passion, as you're aware, is a word that comes from, its meaning is suffering. And so we have the passion of Christ. We have passion fruit. They look like a cross. Well, the flower looks like a cross, not a passion fruit. And we have compassion. That's being together with someone who is suffering. So I guess as a devotion, one has to accept that it may mean you sacrifice some other things because you are devoted to, focused on those things. So for you quilters here, well, for all of you really, okay, yes, I hope that describes all of you creative people. That's my creativity.
Yeah, the next one was for Martin, so anything about the creative process, that'd be great.
Well, yeah, so who here is not creative? Please put your hand up. That's a little bit of a challenge because I think in the age of media and the accessibility of very, very high-end art, we've idealized creativity and we've separated it from everyday life. But if you're cooking a curry and you don't have the right curry paste, you think of something else. You're being creative. So I think we need to reground ourselves in our own awareness of those different levels, the small steps of creativity that we all have. We do our gardens, we decorate our homes, we are inherently creative people. I'm not creative because I can't do what Michelangelo did. So, there we go. So be careful about this notion of creativity.
Thanks. Cool. So, Maureen, can you talk about the creativity of quilting and the freedom in it?
Yeah, well, I found my creativity in fabric and quilting after being told by a teacher that I was hopeless at art and I really should give it up. And it took me more than 30 years to lose or toss that belief aside. It was hard work to let that go. And it was, I remember my sister saying to me one day after I got into quilting, and she just looked at me, she said, "Don't you ever say you're not creative again." And I went, "Oh, yeah, she's my big sister." But, you know, and it was that turned me around. I think that working with textiles is such a tactile activity, and a lot of women, but thankfully also men increasingly, discover that joy of creating with fabric and working with colour that is not having to try and mix colours with a paintbrush. I don't enjoy that, and it's linked to that memory. But playing with colours, it's a very different way of playing with colours. It's just fantastic. There's some fabrics over there you can sit and play with and sort and try and work out what's light and dark and how the fabrics change according to what they're next to. It's fun. And when we're born, we're wrapped in cloth. And so finding my way back to that feeling of comfort and warmth, loving the feel, the smell of fabric, is part of the creative process for me. I hear people say, "Oh, these are all going to be heirlooms handed down through generations." I have to say, I cringe. When I give a quilt away, I say use it. They're washable, they're usable, and if you bring it back to me in 10 years or 20 years and say, "It's falling apart," I've had 2 come back in 20 years. It was the fabric that gave up, not the stitching. And I'll replace it or I'll repair it. Because that to me is the highest compliment that somebody can give me, that they have loved my quilts so much that they've worn them out. And I certainly don't want my quilts to be folded away because they're too special and they're then handed down smelling of mothballs. Have you got those quilts like that?
No, Mary. Yeah. I had 2 quilts that I was given in my life, and they're beautiful, and they were gifts, and they're in the laundry cupboard, and they are too precious to take out. It's like the family jewellery or whatever. So yeah, we promised Mary to put them on the spare bedroom at least.
Well done. Don't forget to cuddle them.
Nice. So, Maureen, I've heard you talk about, as you're working, that you're being in the flow. Okay? How does this feel? What does this feel like to you, and how does it help you?
Well, I hope I'm not repeating myself too much, but I guess it's the being totally lost in the work, losing a sense of time for minutes or hours. I see nodding heads, otherwise quilters. My heart rate and my breathing change. My sense of wellness increases. And a sense of celebration when a quilt comes together. I've achieved something great. I can't describe that any other way, but gosh, it feels good. And I'm not saying that there aren't times of frustration and anger and confusion. As I said before, the more I quilt, the more I unpick. But that's part of life. And for me, I sometimes I call it fabric meditation. But just sitting down with a pile of fabrics and stroking them or sorting them. And I often say to people, I used to sell fabrics at craft show, and they say, "I love this, I have to have it, but what am I going to do with it?" And I say, it's called quilt meditation. If you need to, put a candle in front of you and just sit there for 20 minutes or half an hour touching the fabric. I said, if you say to people, "Oh, I meditate for 20 minutes a day," they'll tell you, "Oh, aren't you wonderful? That's really good." Well, I said, do it with fabric. It's the same process of meditating, of becoming totally lost, but touching fabric helps.
So, Martin, you do stonework, and as you're working, do you get into the flow? And what's that doing for you? And what's it doing for us? What's that do for us?
Well, I'd say Maureen said enough, I think, about flow, that it's the self-transcendence, basically. There's a book called Flow by a chap, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, It's a long name for a Czech name, I think. It's an old book. It's wonderful, but look it up. Flow. It's really, really informative. So I won't try and summarise the book. By the way, there's also an article in the Mail, this week's Mail, that I wrote about, as a background to this talk. So I don't want to repeat all of what's in that article. And there's a book that Maureen has, which is called
Craft Psychology, and it's going to go into the local library. I'll put it in there this week. They've agreed to have it so that it can be used in the community.
Excellent. So, Peter, in the notes you sent to me, you talked about in the praise of making time. Okay, what is the importance of this, and what have how does it match with everything we've talked about so far?
Thank you, yes. I've actually got a question for the audience. And the question, and this is not, well, it is partly a trick question. How many types of time are there? There are 4 types of time. All right, can anyone name? Yeah, put time into...
The Italian verb.
Sorry?
The Italian verb.
All right, here we go. Oh, sorry, I kicked off you down here. But what, free time, yes, lovely. There's a space-time, and did you know that the second is getting longer? So our universe is expanding, so time is not constant. So that's the first thing. The second time is that time is an artificial construct, and it is called linear time, and we have manufactured this. It doesn't exist, and it is a time that was tied in with people needing to be honest, possibly with the onset of the clock, but it was used by industrial societies to manage people. So it is an artificial construct. The third sort of time is the natural time, and it's a circular time. It is a time that involves birth, decay, night, all right, and morning and day. And it is what nature runs by. Nature does not have a clock, but it has this sort of time. And it is a time that when you are into interests and focused on things, you tend not to be occupied by linear time. It is the time you get when you take your watch off. It is as you get older, you are much more in touch with this natural time, and it's something to look for. And the fourth sort of time is no time, which is what the flow is telling me about. That is when there is no sense of time. So we can be doing something and the clock is ticking, but our sense of time is that we're still in the same place. And that is from meditation to being in the flow. I was a canoeist once, and I was in a race, and yes, I'd canoed a lot before, and I finished a 2-hour marathon kayak race in white water. I could not remember a single event in that 2 hours, nothing, all right? And I was totally focused, and in case you're interested, I won. So, it was like, and so the two things were quite obviously good. So, yeah, so to me, making time, all right, is about choosing for yourself to take time to focus on something. And we have to be grateful for it, because making time is a privilege in our affluent society. When most of the world is in poverty, so many are suffering through war and the consequences of greed and power. We're not in a good time at the moment to get the time word. So I've taken the liberty of just illustrating, I suppose, what I feel in maintaining one's own mental health, and more really, is how to make time to do these things and to focus on things. So I've got a little list of, I think, 3 or 4, but one of them is, and what you do with craft is you focus on the now, on the present, you know, and you avoid, you discard, you know, I've got so much to do and so little time to do it. You ignore that. You're focusing on what's happening now. You focus, I'll put this, the focus on the no. I mean, things that you don't, you know, have to do, things that are negative, things that get you down. You focus on what's good, what's positive. And you don't focus on trying to change things that you are never going to change. And it's a preoccupation a lot of people seem to know. You focus on knowing yourself and specifically connecting to your inner core. And I'm just going to mention some things that I believe do it, and you want to treasure those things and you want to look for those things. And the first one is awe. I came in here and looked, I think that one and went, wow, you know. So it's that focus of awe that gets you in touch with your inner core. In other words, your inner core is your soul, your true self, your self that is not covered by your ego, by your prejudice and your kind of already assumptions about things, and you get awe. The next one is beauty. You know, I'd love people to try and describe, you know, the meaning of beauty, and I don't think you'll get there, but beauty is another. And then, probably I'm going to say the next one is connection. And, you know, connection is every cell in our body has, you know, 4 drives, but one of those drives is to connect. And so, you know, our 37 trillion cells all know what to do and how to relate to their neighbors and how to be a nerve cell if they are a nerve cell, you know. And, you know, so connection is a vital thing for us. And when you connect with someone, and you've done it by listening to them, showing some empathy, making an effort to have contact with them, when you connect, you generally feel the emotion of it, and you will get a warm feeling. You will have a sense of this is good. And what you're doing is connecting to something deep inside you, and you have got a feeling of being on the same page as that person. And it is, you know, part of the conversation curve, and connection leads to understanding, it leads to respect, it leads to compassion, it leads to love. You are connected. And the other one, which came across, you know, really in later life, is real fun. Not just fun and telling jokes, but real fun. Real fun is silly, it's spontaneous. It has no purpose at all. And real fun, okay, is something you can share with other people, and often do. And to me, these experiences, all right, connect you with your sort of inner core and your deep sense of your own values. And these inner core is part of what you've also inherited. And just my 3 others, okay. A focus on not being ruled by yourself, not thinking you are the center of the universe. And again, when you do a shared hobby or craft, that's what you're doing. And I think it's an example of this need not to see yourself as the most important person in the world. A focus on what you can do and what you cannot do, quite obviously useful for when you've got this disadvantages of any sort, and a focus on meaning and purpose. As I've said before, these are things that actually benefit your health.
Great.
Sorry, thank you for allowing me to...
No, that leads us perfectly into the next part. This leads us perfectly into the next part, which is actually the benefits of quilting in a group, the benefits of crafting in a group, and what that does for us.